It's alive!
Hello?
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you!
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts.
I am Daniel DeBona.
I am. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm getting ahead of myself, dude. I'm sorry.
So excited.
I am a guest today. I'm Andrew Chacon.
Yes, you are. You got that part right, at least.
Yeah,
so that was good. And I'm David, but you don't care about that. So Andy, something that we've been doing with all the guests is we've got some echo there. See where it's coming in from.
Okay. We good?
Hello?
How about now? We still got echo?
No, seems gone.
I'm good. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, one of the things that we've been asking all of our guests to do is to give a little background on their relationship with horror, their horror history, as it were. So, Andy, where does your relationship with horror begin?
Dude, I will tell you that I was thinking about this. You're a product of the 90s. I'm a product of the 80s, man. So horror is different. It's different when you think about it. I grew up with slasher movies. You know, it wasn't until I was older that I started appreciating like Argento and things like Suspiria. You know, but like for me, it started like I was sneaking into the movie theaters to watch like Evil Dead 2, you know.
Oh, so good.
and Return of the Living Dead. I mean, these are the things that I enjoyed when I was a kid, you know, because I lived basically in a really small town in Miami Lakes. You know, we had one movie theater, had 4 theaters. You know, sneak into the back of it, you watch a scary movie. You know, that's what it was for me. But Freddy and Jason, you know, those were big in the 80s, you know, and that's what I grew up on. And like I said, I didn't start appreciating things from like the 60s, you know, and the 70s until I got older, you know. So that's where
the nuanced stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that applies to all of us, right? You get into it when you're in high school, and it's just about blood and boobs, like we tend to do,
exactly.
like we talk about when we do slasher films. But yeah, like as you get older and you learn to appreciate, that's when you start to get into the nuanced stuff, the stuff that really haunts you, doesn't just make you jump.
Yeah,
right, absolutely.
Yeah, you mentioned 2 of my absolute favorites, Evil Dead 2 and Return of the Living Dead. I mean, these are like the perfect mixing of horror and comedy. It's
great.
They're just fantastic.
And it's funny, like with Evil Dead, when I saw Army of Darkness, you know, I was already in college, you know, so it was basically seeing it from when I was a kid, you know, and then in middle school, and then just growing up, and then seeing it evolve as you get older. I mean the horror, the comedy, it's all just great, you know.
Yeah, I agree. That's fantastic, man. Yeah, I would love to have been around for that stuff as it was coming out.
Yeah,
it's like you said, I'm a 90s kid, so for me, you know, even though I love the 80s slashers, and truthfully they're probably the horror movies I watch most often, for me
horror
starts with like the later Friday the 13th movies,
right?
With the later Nightmare on Elm Street stuff,
right?
From the early 90s that like I'd pick up at, you know, Blockbuster, and you know it's what was up there, you know. stuff like Scream. Like that's what was Candyman. That's the stuff that was.
Right.
You know, the posters were up when I went to the movie theater. I'm like, that looks really scary. I want to watch that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. That's great. So we have with us now something that we haven't done since we came back from our hiatus, which is a brand new movie.
Absolutely.
Because we did this with Fear Street, and I was pleasantly surprised with Fear Street. And here we are with Malignant, which was released last week. Was it last week or maybe the week
I believe
before?
it was, yeah. Like if you're watching live, it was just this past weekend. I think this movie is less than a week old. If you're listening, then just in the past couple weeks.
Yeah, and directed by I think one of the modern horror maestros, James Wan. He took a little detour into superhero movies, which I personally liked. I liked Aquaman.
I thought he did a great job with Aquaman.
Yeah, to me, going back to the 80s, I felt like it evoked like 80s like sci-fi action movies, in the vein of like Krull and Beastmaster and stuff like that. But he's clearly going back to, I think, like 70s horror with this movie, which he did with Conjuring, which he did with Insidious. Like this seems to be his wheelhouse. So he I think he's kind of positioned himself as one of these like modern visionaries, right? He's calling back to this old stuff, but like with the Saw, he kind of turned the genre on its head, right? So how does this stack up against his past horror movies? I mean, when people talk about the modern scary movies, like the scariest movies of the last 10, 15 years, you're going to see Conjuring, you're going to see Insidious on people's lists. So how does this one fare? Andy, you want to go first since you're a guest?
I got to make the comparison to his earlier work. I mean, I'm a big fan of Insidious. I love The Conjuring, and the funny thing is he has a formula, but he's not formulaic. And when you watch his films, I mean, you may see the same thing again, the way that the lights go out and the shadows in the corner and the lights go on and then the person standing there, and you see that. But it's not, you don't go in there thinking, it's the same thing. No, man, it gets you every time, and that's just the way that he is with his films. I appreciate that. I really do. As far as this film, because I do say there's a formula to it, he does take a step further as far as the reveal, which to me was a little nuts,
Yeah.
That's an understatement.
Which is unlike his other films, because
spoiler alert, this is a brand new movie. If you have not seen it yet, we are going to be talking about the movie. There's always twists in a James Wan movie, so prepare yourself. You have been warned. This is the only spoiler alert we're going to give.
Yeah. So here the reality is another thing that I liked about the film was I don't know if you guys have ever been to Seattle,
I actually haven't. Yeah.
I was there. I've been there a couple of times when I worked for Clear Channel ages ago, but I didn't see much of it. And I went on an Alaskan cruise a couple of years ago, and we spent a few days in Seattle, and I learned about the underground. But I had my 10-year-old kids with me. I didn't want to fill them with their crop of nightmares for the month by taking them into the underground. So I wasn't able to go, but I heard so much about it, and Seattle is just an amazing city. So when they brought that history into it, I thought that was really cool. And I wish they would have expanded on that a little bit, but they didn't, and that's fine. But Seattle's a
I was disappointed, but hey, fuck me, right?
But you know what? the city itself is just a great backdrop to the movie, and I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but the whole idea of the creepy hospital on the side of a cliff thing, and that actually exists up there, man. There's a really cool one in Vancouver that I'd never go to, but those I'm telling you, but those asylums actually exist. So when you see that in that movie, you're not saying, man, that's far fetched. No, that actually exists. I mean, maybe not to that level, but it's there. So I really thought that was cool too. But I gotta say, like, well, it was just a little too much for me. But I'll leave it at that. As far, you guys go ahead and I'll just piggyback off of that.
No, that's good, I think.
So yeah, like watching this movie. And knowing who James Wan is, knowing all of these films that he's done, you immediately start making those comparisons. So you immediately see, oh, creepy house, right? Totally Wan. Like that's all him. He knows a creepy house. He's gonna stick with doing creepy houses. But then it does twist from that. It does start to change. So when you start to compare it, there are some parallels to be drawn here. Like Andy said, in some of the ways that he does certain things, certain gags, for lack of a better word, kind of play out the same way. But this movie definitely carved out its own space in what Wan has done. It's easy to occasionally think of Insidious or think of The Conjuring and not remember exactly which one is which, right? You start to kind of interplay, especially because the one dude who plays James Wan is in both of them, right? So it's easy to kind of misplace details from the two of those movies within each other. This movie, I think, very much stood alone. Like, you're not going to start to think about Malignant and be like, oh, wait, did that happen in Insidious or did that happen in Malignant? No, not in this one. So I can tell that while he wanted this to be a movie that everybody would know was his, there were also a lot of things that we're going to get into that definitely made it stand out, right? And at times, I think that really worked. I think there are some other times where maybe the movie kind of started to lose its way, depending on what you're looking for. So as far as it stacks up, I'm not willing to put it on a level with Insidious and Conjuring, because, like you said, I consider those just elite new age horror movies. Like those are really a masterclass in how you make a horror movie these days. And this one, I think, falls more into an early 2000s kind of feel, which I'm not holding that against him. I'm not saying that makes it worse. I'm just saying it doesn't set it apart from other horror films like those two are, but it definitely sets it apart from other Wan films.
Right.
I love that comparison that you made to it being like early 2000s horror films. I definitely got that feel watching the movie, that this movie was a throwback, not just to the 1970s like mystery thrillers that he's clearly like leaning into a little bit, but also in style, in the way that he's telling this story. To me, it felt a lot like that sort of resurgence in the slasher that came about in the early 2000s. Right. That gave us those, whether you like them or you don't, those reboots of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th. This,
Jeepers
I think,
Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers, yeah. Valentine, Urban Legend, stuff like that. This, I think, would have been right at home in that era. Although clearly there's some special effects here that make it kind of stand apart. I am a James Wan fanboy, and I make I'm not going to mince words. I love him. Anything he makes, I'm going to watch.
Man, when you paused after you said I make, I was like, if this fool says fan fiction.
Yes, it's him and Lee Whannell, and they and they're in a romantic relationship.
Yes.
It's
horror
yeah,
flash flick.
Yeah, it's called 50 Shades of Blood. So
Yeah, and I mean, like as we look at this, I know we're gonna get to it, but man, the one thing that definitely that you look at this and you're like, man, how do I stack this up against other Wan films? Man, this dude can shoot the hell out of a movie.
Yes, he
Yeah.
can.
He can
Oh
shoot
my
a damn
gosh,
movie.
that one
And-
scene. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. I'm just gonna say, like, I know we're gonna get into technical aspects and stuff later, but just off the top, I mean, like, immediately you're assaulted with how well, like, the vision that this guy has for a movie and how well it translates to the screen.
I personally think that I mentioned I was a Wan fanboy. I think that without Wan at the helm, this would be a somewhat forgettable horror flick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With an interesting twist that if you buy into it, movie works well, and if you don't, movie's destroyed by it.
Right.
It certainly is not something on the level of High Tension. I know we always go back to High
knew
Tension.
we were going to bring up High Tension again, but yeah.
For twists that don't work. But High Tension is a twist that doesn't work no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
So this is one where it's like, okay, you either accept the terms that are presented to you or you don't. You know, it's kind of like, well, I either accept that Superman can fly and that he can, bounce bullets off of his skin, that he's got laser eyes and like super breath, but he can't see through iron. Like I either accept that and enjoy a Superman movie and the comics and the cartoons and all that, or I don't. And in which case I can't enjoy any of that stuff. Right. So I think that that's what this twist is. And we'll get to that, to what the twist is and how it works later. But I think without him, this movie just becomes so much fodder in the in the streaming verse.
And just real quick, as we are a podcast network full of geeks, geekbro.net, check us out. He can't see through lead, not iron.
It is lead. Thank you so much. I said it, and as I was saying, and I was like, I know this is wrong. But I can't remember what it is. And I was like, it's not bronze. I know it's not steel. So embarrassing. Yeah, exactly.
I absolutely agree with you, because for all of the reasons that we're going to get into, which are other bullet points, that is what makes this a James Wan film. Like that, like when you sent me the list today, I was like, okay, he sent me a list that's like, here are the reasons this is a James Wan film. Like, we're going to talk about these, right? and I mean, it's so perfect in that, because you can look back on so many of his movies and see that, like Saw, okay, maybe anybody could have done a good job with that. That twist was so out of left field, nobody saw that coming. But when you look at Insidious and The Conjuring, and you look at how much of that is environmental creep factor and score and just things being done exactly right, it's easy to think that either one of those movies without James Wan could have just been thrown in the endless pile of haunted house movies that come out every other year.
Fair enough.
And you're absolutely right, this is another one that would have just been, without him, there's a very good possibility it would have just been like sure, like, okay, yeah, it exists, I saw it, it was weird, the twist was the twist. But yeah, for all the reasons that we're going to get to, I absolutely agree that he's the one who made this.
That's really fair, because Conjuring, which I think of as his his magnum opus, you take him out of it and you probably would have people saying, what's another Amityville horror clone?
There we go.
And with him, what you have is what I've seen and heard many people refer to as the scariest movie in the last 15 or 20 years.
Absolutely.
Easily. I've seen that movie. I've seen that movie so many times, and I still get scared.
Yeah, absolutely. Bathsheba is the scariest fucking monster.
Yes.
Maybe since, I don't know, like Reagan in The Exorcist. I don't know.
Yeah. Is it
amazing?
Look, for me, I think that every time, and I'm talking about all his films, I mean, it's just that the camera work just gets better and better with every movie. And this film was actually an idea that he had, back then. I just didn't think that he thought that he could pull it off, or perhaps maybe he wanted to do something else, something a little bit more marketable before he did something like this,
Oh.
because this, again, I mean, like I said, this is it gets to the point where you either, like what David was saying, you either accept it or you don't, and I'm sure that will accept it. Maybe not, but I'm sure that a lot of other people would have watched this and would have said, "There's no way I'm not accepting this." So perhaps maybe this is the perfect time for this movie for him, as compared to like all his other films, which were so much better.
So as we're talking about, just James Wan and his history, a huge part of James Wan's history is in the fact that he is considered, one of these new age practical effects guys. He wants to take and push practical effects to their absolute limits, with CGI being a last resort. Oftentimes he wants you to see and feel everything that's happening before he relies on a computer to generate those emotions inside of you. So when we look at this particular movie, when we look at Malignant, how do you feel about the special effects? Which it's easy to kind of look at this one possibly and see, one way or the other, but practical versus CGI compared to some of his other movies. What do you think just about the special effects in this one, Dave?
I absolutely loved the special effects in this movie. I think that he, as he's kind of shown in the past, like he only relies on CGI when it's absolutely necessary, when this is not something that you can do with practical effects. He and the writer for the film, Ingrid Bisu, who actually played Winnie, the forensic scientist. She gave an interview where she discussed how they did this, and like the transformation scene, right? So not, I guess we have to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
But when Maddie, or Emily, is turning into Gabriel, it's like so many composite shots that they do, like in camera, where it's Annabelle Wallace's performance until they cut to the animatronic that's coming out of her, which of course is a practical effect, and it's done so well. And like we don't even see that until the jail cell scene. We don't really actually see that transformation, and we've been thinking about it. It's been suggested. We're like, okay, are we actually going to fucking see this now? Right. And then when you finally get to see it, it's everything you wanted. And then the way that it so seamlessly cuts into the two contortionists that they used for the film. One who had worked with him previously on The Conjuring and Insidious, and another who was hired specifically for this, who did a lot of the parkour and a lot of the movements. It makes for something that's so real, like something that's so outlandish can seem real, and it really isn't until we get to the actual, I guess the police bay, whatever you want to call it, where we start getting the bullpen. That's what it's called. Thank you. I knew it was something with a B. That we start seeing any CGI, and still, if you read this interview, Bisu talks about how Juan thought he was going to have to film the thing in reverse. Right, film it and then play it back in reverse. Wow. But this contortionist, she was a dancer and contortionist. She was so good at doing things backwards that he didn't have to.
See, so I was wondering as I watched it, because of the movement with the backwards body, I was wondering how much of it was actually playing backwards. So you're saying none of it.
None of it. According to this interview, now, no special features or anything like that are available at present time, at the time of this recording, because it's just been released. I'm sure once a Blu-ray comes out and we can, you know, watch making of and all this stuff, behind the scenes footage, we'll get some more on it. But I found this article on Bleeding Cool, which is where I tend to go for I'm sorry, not Bleeding Cool, Bloody Disgusting, which is where I tend to go for my horror news. And this is the second flub of the day. I need some more of this. Excuse me. Flub. According to that interview on Bloody Disgusting, they didn't have to do it. So I mean, to me, that's just fucking insane.
Yeah.
And so the CGI that we get is obviously, you know, we get some blood spatter there in the bullpen, lots of blood that we see coming out in the jail cell, but so much of this relies on that special effects done in front of the camera. You know, starting with that very opening scene when we see Gabriel obscured by the curtain.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That was chilling. To me, the things that set a James Wan movie apart, and this does just as well as Conjuring or Insidious, is special effects and his technical proficiency. You know, things like just turning lights on and off, and all of a sudden there's someone there and someone's not there, and then someone's there again. You know, things like that. It's just like old school camera tricks that he knows. You know, he prays at the altar of the old school, and like the very old school, like going back to the 30s, the 40s. You know, you look at things that James Whale was doing with Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and the Invisible Man, like the camera tricks, light tricks, and that's what he's doing, but he's like ratcheting it up to 11, you know, because these amps go to 11, and he's creating something that is truly terrifying. It's not just atmospheric anymore, but the special effects actually add something to this movie. So I mean, in my opinion, this is really where the movie shines.
All right, what do you think, Andy?
Well, one of the scenes that I enjoyed, well, like I said, the camera work is just so much better in this film. When she's running through the house and she's going from the downstairs to the upstairs, and you see the camera angle straight from the top, you know, and just following her home. Well, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing, and you don't see that in his other films. He's just being, to me, it's just being more experimental, especially with this film. And in the very beginning, what David was talking about, I honestly knew nothing about the fact that that was actually, that it was a contortionist, but I didn't realize that was all her. I didn't know that. You know, that and the camera work just makes me just think that this is just now even better than what I thought it was. I mean, I have this thing that I call it like horror reality. Like there's only so much that you could push it to, and then you say to yourself, well, wait a second, you know, because for me, I like when the reveal came out, I was like, oh, and then I went, oh. You know, so you know,
I think we may have all had that reaction.
Yeah, but still, like there was a difference. The jail cell scene was out of hand, amazing, was incredible. You know,
I think that scene gives the hallway fight in Old Boy a run for its money.
You know, it really does. Like that stacks up with so many of those great, and that hallway scene, you know, has been recreated ad infinitum at this point. Daredevil's done it twice.
Oh yeah,
you know, but it really does stand out as one of the as something that's amazing. When it comes to the special effects in this, I was kind of torn at first, and it was a silly thing that I got over immediately. And kind of brought myself into letting myself believe it was cool, but it just kind of it was so out of place for me. That first time when she like experiences like the room melting around her, and she's brought to where Gabriel is committing this murder. I was like, oh, that was weird. And then it wasn't necessarily that it took me out of the moment. It was like it made it made me uncomfortable for some reason, but then that kind of played into what they were after, because she was supposed to be uncomfortable. And that was obviously CGI, but the way it was done, and part of it may have just been you're not used to this level of CGI in his films. That was, by the second time it happened, I was ready for it. I was so in awe of how beautiful that transition was, and the way that one room would melt away and then the other one would literally build from the ground up. Like it would melt down and then build up. It wasn't just like a wipe or a seamless transition. So by the second time that happened, I was floored at how beautiful that was. And like you said, there is some CGI here where you got some blood splatters and you got some things like that. But that moment of CGI was so incredibly done that I was good with it. It was one of those things where I think at first I was just kind of like, I wasn't expecting CGI. So that was weird. But then when I could appreciate it that second time through, I liked it a lot. I think that the special effects, as far as some of the makeup is concerned, was incredible. That very first time when we see a close-up of Gabriel's face when she's stuck
on the
there.
bed.
Yes. Yeah, when she's stuck there on the bed and he's murdering one of the doctors, and you see that close-up of the face. I mean, that's nightmare fuel. The way that face looked, and it looked right at her, and it was just like this one eyeball moving really rapidly around.
And it was neon green.
Yes. And it was obviously on a face-like thing, but you could tell it wasn't really a face because it wasn't positioned where you would like to see an eyeball. And so the makeup in those situations was just so good. And so many of the little things that they do during the murders, and just how brutal these scenes played out when we're watching these people get killed. And
this was his most brutal film.
Yes, bloody. Man.
The line between what was CGI and what was practical was so fine in those moments when he's on top of that first doctor, like beating her with the statue that he eventually turns into the murder weapon. God, like I could feel every one of those blows. And part of that was the special effects and how good it was. But another part of that was absolutely just how well that actor was selling actually beating someone to death with the statue. And there was so much rage in every one of those blows that the special effects just sold even more so what the actor was giving me, which was just pure unadulterated rage. And so when we do get the special effects that are not practical, they do so in just enough way to highlight something. He never leans directly on a big moment being CGI. He very much uses it as a garnish, not as your entree.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And that's what makes the special effects in this so good. It doesn't rely only on the special effects. The special effects are almost an afterthought. You're so into what's going on, whether it be the action scene in the bullpen, whether it be the massive gory reveal in the jail cell, or one of the murders. You're so engrossed in what's actually happening that the special effects only serve to heighten that mood instead of them being the sole purpose for that scene existing.
Right. One of the things that you said that really struck me was the murder weapon. I mean, that takes me back to the idea of like Freddy's glove, or a chainsaw. I mean, they put a lot of emphasis in creating that murder weapon, and that was really cool. When I saw the preview to the movie, they had the scene of the CGI where the room is changing, and the last Wan film that I saw was A Conjuring 2. and I was thinking to myself, I hope that he doesn't put a lot of CGI into this film, because if you saw The Conjuring 2, and I was talking to David about this, what's the name of the character in The Conjuring 2?
Valak?
No,
the Crooked Man. The
Crooked Man.
The Crooked Man. When I saw that in the Conjuring 2, the CGI to me almost seemed laughable, you know. And so I was sort of worried that it was going to happen in this film when I saw that. But you're absolutely right. It was beautiful. It was the transformation, and there was a connection. There was an absolute connection, and I dug that. That was excellent.
One of the things that I really loved about this movie was I kind of felt like because the violence is so visceral and so real.
Oh God!
Despite the like absolute bonkers twist in this movie, the actual violence itself is pretty real.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to me like he was pulling from so many like real gritty movies to like he thought, okay, so where have I seen like the best violence, and where have I like winced when I've been watching these movies, and he kind of did that himself, because I saw in particularly the jail cell scene and the bullpen scene. There's bits of Old Boy in there. There's bits of The Raid in there. There's bits of Bone Tomahawk in there. There's bits of Brawl in Cell Block 99 in there. Ooh, and to me, it was like, Wan does this thing where kind of like we were talking about Del Toro last week, where he can take inspiration and turn it into something unique and turn it into something his own, where I was watching this and thinking, I wonder if that's where he got it from, instead of, oh, that's clearly from this place. And I think delivers something that to me is just as visceral, because it's reminding me of all these things where I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. That seems really fucking painful. Where I thought that, and also not related to this at all, but Andy, I thought about the conversation you and I had about the Crooked Man and about his presentation and how you didn't like it. And I think I know why the Crooked Man looks the way that he looks, because nothing else in that movie looks that way.
Right. No, it doesn't at all.
So remember that the little boy has that sort of, I don't remember what it's called, but that little toy where the lamp turns on
and it projects,
and it projects, and so it moves in this really like staccato way.
Right.
The Crooked Man moves in the same way that it does in that little lamp. So I think it's intentional. Now,
that makes sense. It makes sense.
Whether that translates to something that actually looks good on screen, like I enjoy it. Just because to me it reminded me of the old claymation and dynamation stuff that Ray Harryhausen would do. And anything that reminds me of Jason and the Argonauts, I think is a good thing. So, but since we've been talking about this, I mean, we can't.
We've been tiptoeing.
we can't really get around it. The fucking plot and the twist to this movie, right? I mean, the special effects are like intimately tied to this thing. So, I mean, for starters, does the narrative work on a very simple, basic level? Does the narrative work? My opinion, I think he's drawing from a lot of like 1970s Italian giallo films. I don't know if you guys are really familiar with this. I know who I'm talking to, so I know you are. I mean, fuck, Andy, you named the maestro, Argento at the top of the show. These were, for the listener, if you're not familiar with, or the viewer, if you're not familiar with giallo films, these were sort of like almost like mystery thrillers in the Agatha Christie style or the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle style, but supremely bloodier and more erotic, and are kind of the progenitors of the slasher. So at the core of this was usually either a detective or someone playing detective trying to solve a mystery. And in this case, we have two. We have the actual detective, and we have Maddie trying to solve the mystery on her own, right? So does this work as like a throwback 70s giallo? Does it work as its own thing? And the fucking twist, right? How does the twist work for you? Does it not work for you? What were your thoughts when it happened? What are your thoughts now that you've had a little bit of time to digest? Daniel, we'll start with you.
So I'm just gonna jump right out there. I'm gonna get into the plot twist. Okay, so last chance. If you haven't seen it yet, turn it off now. So we eventually find out that Gabriel does exist. He is not just a voice inside her head. He was a parasitic twin that was attached to her. He was evil, just pure evil. She referred to him as the devil. They attempted to remove him. Okay, I'm with you so far. But then they were like, but they're connected at the brain. So there's some of it we can't take away. So we're just going to push him down into the back of her skull. And then we're going to like build another skull on top of it. And I was like, okay, now maybe I'm not with you, but I can forgive the fact that that moment of like sealing him down in her skull was weird for me. I can forgive that because of the fact that he still existed in her skull. We got that amazing scene of her skull literally splitting open as he emerged.
That was great, man. That was absolutely great.
So I'm willing to forgive the fact that that was a little bit much for me because it explained why this started after she got her head smashed into a wall.
Right.
And like I said, it gave us that incredible scene of watching him physically emerge from her head, right? So that being said, I think that they did a lot to explain the plot twist rather than just being like, she's a chimera, look it up. They did a lot to actually go through and show us what Gabriel looked like early in her life, which was fucking terrifying. They explained that not only could she know what he was seeing, but there was like a little line that in the moment almost seemed throwaway where they said Gabriel is able to make her see whatever he wants. And then all of those little things ended up building into this idea that she's kind of the killer, but it's kind of Gabriel because they're kind of the same person. And all of that, when put together into a big stew, instead of just being this one initial, saw, oh man, that guy's alive. He's been there all the time. Twist. The end. This one was a very elaborate twist. It reminded me of, there was a movie called The Skeleton Key.
Oh, yes.
That came out. That always cracked me up because one of the main promotional thing for The Skeleton Key was like, no matter what you do, don't give away the ending. And it was like, how could I? I have to explain the entire movie to give away the twist. You can't. And so, like I said, with this little synopsis I've given you here, there's still so much involved with this twist. This was not the type of plot twist that comes out of left field and then you can kind of look back on and realize it plays into the movie. When you get to this, you realize that every single thing that's happened in the movie has led to this plot twist. It's not there to turn the movie on its head. It's there to explain the movie, which, almost doesn't even make it a plot twist. It almost just makes it the plot reveal. And then you realize that everything was getting to this. So from that perspective, I think the narrative works beautifully because I was very happy when this movie was over, like you said, to have some time to let it digest. And now looking back on it, I can look back at so many things that weren't clues to what the twist was. It was just the plot evolving till we reached what was that pinnacle. So I think that the narrative works really, really well. I think that they did a lot to avoid the high tension misstep. Right. They did a lot to make sure that when we were told, no, she was there, she was witnessing these things because she was physically there when all these murders happened. They made sure to be very careful that we were never left in a position to be able to go back and find somewhere to poke a hole in that theory. So when the narrative builds like that, I think that it's very well done. When you're talking about giallo films that this throws back to, I don't necessarily, I can see Argento in these, but when I'm looking at a giallo film that I'm going to compare to these, I'm thinking Sergio Martino, specifically All the Colors of the Dark. All the suspense and everything that was built in All the Colors of the Dark, and it was just the weird way the movie left you uncomfortable the entire time. As soon as you said giallo and I started trying to think of ones, I immediately threw back to that one. And there's another one called, and it's one of the most freakish like movie names ever, but it's called Your Voice is a Locked Room and Only Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the key.
Yeah.
And that's
probably my favorite Martino one.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
Yeah.
But that's another one where so much of it is creep factor and feeling uncomfortable, which a lot of these are. But like I said, I didn't see a lot of the things that you would look for in an Argento in these, but I did see a lot of Sergio Martino once you mentioned giallo and I started thinking back on it. So if you're watching this and you are learning about giallo films right now, those are my two Martino recommendations.
I think while I was watching the movie, why it works for me and why it doesn't work for me. There was one scene. You watch a film and you say to yourself that, like, for example, you want Gabriel to be a certain thing, but then as the movie moves on, he's something else. And you either accept it or you don't. There was one scene where she's on the phone and her back is to a mirror. And you could see that her long hair draped over her back, sort of resembles Gabriel. I don't know if you remember that. It was a pretty long
scene, but I don't remember.
Right, right. But it's a pretty long phone conversation, and I was watching this, and she kept on moving around. I think that might have been deliberate on Wan's part to do that, so that you get a sense. Okay, there's more of a connection here. I mean, honestly, I read a little bit about it. I mean, I told David conjoined twins, but it wasn't a conjoined twin. It's a teratoma.
Yeah,
teratoma,
yes.
Right?
Teratoma,
and,
Teratoma.
Which translated is monster tumor. In Greek, it really is. If this wouldn't have been a Wan film, you could have put, like you said, you could have put it somewhere in Tubi, and it would have been a good title for this movie. Monster tumor. But you see that. Then you see everything that, like, for example, the chase through the underground. Where what's his name? Kikoa, I believe that's the police officer who's chasing him through the underground, and then they scuffle, but he's still chasing him. And then they're up at the top of the building, and then he parkours down, which was incredible. It was actually really neat. But then I'm there thinking, you know what? This person has been dormant for so long. Was he like in some like subconscious Shaolin, parkour class? It's like, come on, give me a break here. But you know what? It was still really cool. And so for me, the story, that's why I was more like, when the reveal came out, I was like, oh, that's cool. But, and so I was fine with it. I really was fine with it. It wasn't exactly it's what I expected, but it's not what I wanted. I don't know if you understand that.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so it works. It works for what it is, especially for the way that like my favorite scene was the jail cell scene, and that in and of itself, when she like goes and just rips the back of her head open, I was like, wow, But then the other thing, like, you're sitting there and you're watching the reveal, where you see, when you're watching like the Manson home video films, that the mother and daughter are watching these movies, right? And then they turn the camera around from the front of her face, and then you see her back, and then you see Gabriel in his infancy.
That was a great reveal.
It was awesome. And I'm there looking at this, and I'm there going, okay, Malignant. Yeah, I get it. And that was done in the afternoon. And then she says, "When's the best time to go to the creepy cliffside, mental institution?" "Well, at night when it's raining. Let's go then. With the flashlight. So that to me was just almost like a little too much. But I get it. I mean, it's James Wan. There has to be a creepy house. It has to exist. Go ahead.
Also, the road to that hospital must have gone way out of the way, because when she spotted it, it was still plenty of daylight. And by the time she got to it, the moon was very high in the sky.
And you notice when she parked, it's not like she parked in a parking space. I mean, like the front tires were almost the side of the cliff, man. I mean, a step and you're like 1,000 feet down. I mean, come on. And then she goes in with a flashlight, and yeah, that's a place I'm gonna rummage through at in the middle of the night. Yeah, I'm not, dude. I'm sorry. That was just a little too much for me, but it's one, and despite the fact that it is too much, it still works. I mean, her character, the sister's character, is very important. What's her name? Sydney.
Yes.
She's an important character. I think that she might have. I think that might have been the poorest acting in the film. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but her character was necessary, absolutely necessary. Yeah,
I wouldn't say she was the poorest acting in the film. I don't know. I guess maybe it wasn't poor acting. It was just kind of the way it was written. But the
lead surgeon, I think, was.
I was thinking the lady who was bad cop was just so like rubber stamped as like a bad cop. Right?
At first, I thought, is this Wanda Sykes? I mean, who is this?
I had the same thought.
Not only did I wonder if that was Wanda Sykes, there were multiple times where I went, "Is this chick Angelina Jolie?" Like the main chick, I was like,
Not only did I think it was Wanda Sykes at first, but then I became convinced that the role was written for Wanda Sykes, and that she read this and said, "I can't do this."
I know, because Wanda Sykes would have seen the Stygian house and would have said, "Hell no, I'm not going in there."
For me, I agree that Argento's giallos tend to be a little bit more straightforward than this. You don't get a lot of that. There's a teratoma there, and it's actually a twin that's attached to the back of the head. But there is one in particular that I think this draws heavy inspiration from, probably thematically, and it's Deep Red. Because of like the deep dive that the main character goes into, and getting into the past and the history of the killer, right? And Sydney does this and discovers that the killer is in fact her sister, but not her sister, that sort of thing. So it did remind me a little bit of that. But I also, since we're just throwing out great giallo directors, y'all have to see Mario Bava's stuff, because Bay of Blood, Blood and Black Lace. These are fucking classics. So if anyone listening has never ventured into the realm of Italian horror, please do yourselves a favor. And
sexy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
You may want to throw me out after this, but when the reveal was when she turned around and you see Gabriel, I thought, man, that's Quado. I mean,
open your mind.
And that's the first thing I thought of when I saw
that. Yeah, personally, I mean, for me, the narrative, I think it works enough. The narrative for me is a delivery system for great moments,
right?
And I think Wan is extremely adept at delivering great moments. If the whole movie was nothing more than leading up to seeing Gabriel come out of the back of her head on the VHS tape, and then almost exactly at the same time seeing that happen in the jail cell and seeing that whole jail cell fight, I think it would have been worth it.
Yeah.
That's worth the price of admission alone, I think. It's and I think it worked fine. This is probably something like I occasionally do director binges. Sometimes it's not even so much like a series where I'm not saying, okay, well, let me watch all of the American Tail movies, right? I'll just watch the first one because I'm going to do a Don Bluth marathon, right?
Oh, not Five Goes West.
I'll skip Five Goes West, which is the better one. It is the better one. I'll admit that. All right. But if I'll do that and follow it up with All Dogs Go to Heaven, and I'll skip All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, and then just go
All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, except the 2 that go to hell. We're gonna do that one on the podcast.
So and then I'll just play Dragon's Lair for like 3 hours.
Dude, I've gotten so close to buying a cabinet of Dragon's Lair so many times.
I am waiting for Arcade 1-Up to finally have theirs go on pre-order.
Yeah.
I've had the money. I've had the money set aside for it, for about a year, however long it's been.
Well, you showed me the copy that you had on your phone. I had to get that. Yeah. I spent hours playing that.
Anytime that game is released, I purchase it.
Yeah.
I've got it on Nintendo. I've got it on Super Nintendo. I've got it on GameCube. I go to Arcade Odyssey here in Miami all the time just to play it. I've spent way too much money on that game. Don Bluth owes me at least like a fucking handshake and a how do you do. So where the fuck was I going with this? This is something that I think will definitely get thrown in with a James Wan marathon. Like I'll watch Saw, Conjuring 1, Insidious 1, and this, and I don't think it's out of place.
Right. I completely agree with you. Like, just for all the reasons and all the things that we've talked about, I think that you could happily enjoy this. And also, it's like I said, there's a palate cleansing aspect to this, and it being something different. So, so while we're talking, director binges and things like that, and we're looking specifically at the direction. When we Andy hinted at this earlier with some of the technical details. So when we're looking at this from a purely technical aspect, we've looked at the plot, we've looked at the gore, we've looked at those things. When we're just talking the technical aspects of this movie, the cinematography, the direction, the score. What was it that stood out to you for good or for bad when it comes to the technical aspects of this movie? Andy, why don't you start us off with this?
The camera direction. That saves the film. Any other director would have shot this differently. He wouldn't have rotated around the scenes the way that he does, and he wouldn't have given you different angles the way that he shoots from above when she's running through the house. He still does his old gags with the darkness and the shadows, but to me that still works. But to me, that's really what saves the film is his direction. And not only that, but it just seems that with every film that he does, despite the story, and going back to the story just briefly, it was the idea for the film a good idea? Absolutely, it was a good idea. There's nothing wrong. I mean, it was a story. It was an idea that could have been done in a billion different ways, but he did it his way, and it worked to a certain level. But like I was saying, some people may not accept it, but I do. And the reason that I accept it is because of his technique, with direction. And for me, that was huge. That was absolutely huge. And so absolutely that's what I feel with regards to the technical aspect of the film and the direction.
Dave?
I feel very similarly. There's lots of movies where if you change that director and have it be shot by anyone else, even an incredibly competent director, what you have is something less than what it is. If you had A Nightmare on Elm Street shot by Tobe Hooper instead of Wes Craven, you would have had a very different movie. One that possibly had a lot of that humor sucked out of Freddy Krueger. Despite Hooper showing that he has a real good sense of humor with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I think that this is one of those movies where without Wan at the helm, you've got a movie that doesn't necessarily work. And that shot that you talked about where it tracks Annabelle Wallace throughout the entire house. I mean, to begin with, the amount of money that must have been spent in creating this set to be able to not only have her run throughout the house and never once see support beams or a wall that should be there but isn't there.
I'm still trying to figure out how the hell he did that, man.
I don't know how it was done, and still have space for the camera, which must be on a crane to move throughout this house. That is to me like a technical feat in filmmaking that like I'm still scratching my head. I think the last time I was that baffled by something was in a deleted scene from Terminator 2. Right. 1991.
I would say I would compare it to how floored I was with the long shot from past to present in Haunting of Hill House.
Right.
Yes. The Haunting of Hill House, they did that amazing long shot where it was one take and they went all the way through that hallway and went from the past to the present. Yeah. Like that one episode that was basically all one take. Like that was the last time when I was this floored by a shot.
I still know how they did that shot.
Yeah, true enough. They just built the one hallway.
They built the one hallway, and it tracked through that hallway, and now we're in the other house. Now, I mean, from a technical aspect, that scene, wow! I mean, I think it was 17 minutes long. That was a 17-minute long take. That's fucking incredible, And very similarly to that same episode of House on Haunted Hill, in the kind of ante room, not in Nell's, funeral room, where the camera keeps circling, and you see the little children
and the players,
and then it circles around, and then you see the adults. That same scene where they're hypnotizing Emily / Madison. I mean, what a fucking scene where the camera keeps circling around and then it gets more and more frantic as she is. Right. That was fucking nuts. And then it culminates with the camera going up and her fucking mother crashing down. Wow, what incredible camera work.
And also, I mean, just and when we're talking just little things, the intensity of the rain outside that window that perfectly built as the tension in the scene built, and that the rain and that storm outside, like as we're experiencing the narrative storm that is her, accessing these regressed memories, we're watching a physical storm become stronger outside the house. Beautiful.
Right.
The symbolism was absolutely incredible. Yeah. And one of the other things that you mentioned, the score, to me, this it was almost like an industrial metal score.
Yeah.
Which I think contributed to that like early 2000s feel that you were talking about early on. I that opening credits, I was like, fuck, this is a banger, man.
Yeah.
Like I wanna, like, I was expecting Trent Reznor or someone to like get up on stage, and like I was here for it, and throughout the film, this score kept that pace up, so even when you started to question the narrative or the plot reveal, or the movie started to maybe feel like it dragged a little, the score kept it up. It kept that pace up. Like when you're in the gym and you're in the fucking weeds and you're like, I don't want to do another rep. And then that's the moment that you put on fucking Children of Bodom, and you're like, nah, fuck that. I'm hitting it again. Let's go. You and me.
Yeah, and from that angle of the score, there were moments in this where the score change was so jarring, but in not a bad way. Like when you'd be at the end of this really long, creepy scene with just that those noises that just keep you up at night, and then all of a sudden it'd be like, here's the skyline of Seattle and some pop music, and you're like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of things like that again, going back to being glad I've had some time to sit with this and that I didn't just finish it. Because when that first happened, I was like, dude, what are you doing? And now I look back on it and I'm like, oh, he was reset. He was resetting the scene. Like now I'm reset and I'm ready for the new information that is going to be brought to me. Like I'm not just one tight muscle waiting to see what happens next. I get a second to breathe and I'll be able to bring in this information that's being delivered to me. I mean, you guys have covered the cinematography, and like I said at the top, man, this is just another picture-esque example of the fact that James Wan can shoot the hell out of a movie.
And I'll just add, look, my least favorite part of the film was the bullpen scene, the fight in the bullpen. But it was filmed so well that it's almost forgettable that I really didn't like. I actually liked it, but that's you understand.
I agree with you. Like, and the bullpen scene, while it was awesome, and you can tell that he wanted to do something else. He's known for
something different.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So you get into these modes. I get into them bad with bands sometimes, where a band will release an album, and I'm like, well, not what I thought was coming out. One of my favorite bands of all time is AFI. They've reinvented themselves probably 20 times over the course of their career, and every time that first time through, you're like, like their newest album is like post-punk. I don't know. I'm still not there yet. But and so, this but I've gotten old enough now to where I can look at something and respect and appreciate the fact that somebody doesn't want themselves to be pigeonholed and they want an opportunity to stretch their wings. And he's like, you know what? I want a fucking action sequence. Like I made Aquaman and that was cool.
Right.
And I've made these scary movies. Like, what if I do both in one movie? Like, is anybody going to put up the money for that? And HBO was like, yeah, we got you. And so I agree, because that is one thing that I definitely agree with. While the bullpen scene was cool and I really liked it, it wasn't what I was expecting. So at the moment, it felt weird. And looking back on it, you're like, okay, it was a really cool scene. I mean, maybe it belonged in another movie, but I can see why they put it in this one. And so, that's maybe one kind of misstep, just kind of depending on how you look at it. But, just everything that was done with this was done so well. Like we talked back when we did Rosemary's Baby, we talked about how different that film would have been if it had stayed in Castle's possession, right? And it had never become a Polanski film,
right?
So, and that's the thing that we keep leaning on with this movie is the fact that this is a James Wan film is why even the things that don't necessarily work for you still work when looked at everything all together. And it's because of this amazing meld of the camera work, the scoring, the everything that goes into it, all of those things blending together with this narrative make it work. And so from a technical perspective, there are a lot of, like you said, there are just some shots in this that are just incredible. Whether or not you like what's happening in that moment or, how somebody's acting or something like that, just the way that the shots and the way that you see everything going on keep you in the moment. You're never so taken aback by something that you're completely removed from the film. Like you're always right there along for the ride. And I think that all of those technical things are what make that happen.
Yeah, that's couldn't have said it better myself. Which kind of leads us to our rating.
Yeah,
right. I think we've covered all bases here. So Andy, out of a possible 5 parasitic twins.
All right.
Thank you, Daniel, for coming up with this one. Which, by the way, you're becoming the fucking king of these things. Out of a possible 5 parasitic twins, how many parasitic twins do you give this?
I got to give it a 4. I love the movie. I think that for me it works, but I don't think that it's as what's the word, as accepting, as his other films. That this one would be a bigger, a difficult pill to swallow for other people. But despite that, the film itself is technically done incredibly well. It's filmed well. The score is amazing. The blood factor is awesome. I mean, just when he got on top of that guy and just like went to work on him, that was just outstanding, dude.
Not only was that scene just gory and beautiful,
but you don't see that in his movies. You do not see that. You don't see that.
But also the concept of being so I don't know if either of y'all have ever experienced sleep paralysis or night terrors or anything like that. But honestly, what sold that particular scene for me was the idea of being stuck in bed next to that happening, which that's the perspective that Emily has. She's laying there just watching it happen, and she can't move. She's right there in the bed as it's happening, inches from her. That was so utterly terrifying to me.
Right. So, I mean, there's so many positive things about this film, but I mean, I'm sorry if I'm going to compare. I don't want to compare it to his other films, but I sort of have to.
You do.
So I'm giving it a 4 out of 5, a solid 4 parasitic twins. But that would mean 2 parasitic twins, right? Not
4. two pairs of parasitic twins.
Yeah. Exactly. There you go. And teach English, not math.
Daniel.
So when I look at this movie, what I've started doing, kind of as we rate these movies is, we're all teachers here. So, and I'm sure with older grades, this plays even better than it does with younger kids. But that idea of everybody in here has a 100 proves you deserve to keep it. Right. So I've started taking that approach to these movies. I'm like, all right, we're starting with 5. And then I'm going to have to, if I have to start ticking boxes on things that you lose points, that's kind of where we come away from things. So when I look at this movie as a whole, and I look for reasons for it to lose some points, I think that this movie lost its way a couple of times from what I was expecting. It obviously didn't lose its way because it's what they meant to make. But as far as the tension of the movie kind of degrading into this action film sequence, I'm going to lose some points there. And I really hate to do this. But the very last little monologue that she gives was so cheesy and cliche that I was like, the very last note I wrote was like cheesy end monologue, right? She gives her sister just this textbook, like, I thought I wanted a blood relative, but you've been here all along. And I was like, fuck, why?
You know what I did? You know what I did when that happened? I turned to Stephanie and I started singing the fucking Frozen song. Na 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 hey na.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
and unfortunately, that was such a at the end of all of this, right? And just the moments that led up to that, while I see what they were getting at, like the level of cheese that it devolved into. Now, if the whole movie's cheesy, like, I'll give you that. But I'll and when you come back, I'll be ready for you, and slams the jail cell. And then she says the thing to her sister. I was like, shit, why, man? Why did you do this to me? So I'm gonna, just because of those missteps, that really the action scenes, they were cool. But just it wasn't necessarily what I was expecting at that point in the movie, and I don't think they necessarily played well into everything. And just the cheese factor being ramped up in those last 5 minutes, I'm going to give this 3.5 parasitic twins.
Okay. All right, the math on that is
that's
out of hand.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm not even going to attempt that. What is that like?
One of them was
one
successfully
and three
removed.
quarters. One and three quarter twins.
Like one of them, they got all the brain fragments out of the other brain.
Somebody's dragging their legs around, dude.
with panda socks, no less.
There you go.
So, when the movie was over, after I finished singing the Frozen theme song, I thought to myself, okay, I didn't know what exactly we were going to be using as a rating system for this one, but I knew it was going to be a 3. And then I thought about it a little more. Right, I saw this on Saturday night. And no, I'm sorry, I saw this Monday night. We're recording this on a Wednesday, so I saw this Monday night, and I went to work the next day. Andy and you and I talked about this Tuesday over some coffee, and after letting it gestate a little bit, I was like, you know what? I kind of like this a little more. I'm going to give it a 3.5. And then I started reading up on it and thinking about the technical aspects of this. And when I was writing up the show program, I was like, man, there's so much fucking good in this movie. And then I was still kind of set on leaving this at 3.5. And then I said something that pushed me over the edge just a little bit ago about how if I were to do a binge and watch Saw, Conjuring, Insidious, or Insidious before Conjuring, right, and then Malignant in that order, I don't think it would feel out of place. And that kind of made me think, you know what? This is not just a good James Wan movie. I think it's a good movie. It's not a great movie,
right?
But James Wan pushes it into this realm of, I think I'd rewatch this thing, and I think I want to rewatch this thing. I want to watch it again and see if I like it even more. And when a movie makes me want to do that, it's usually a sign that there's something there. Very rarely do I end up thinking, hey, you know what? Let me rewatch this thing. And I'm like, nope. And then I'm like, yeah, no, it's not going to work out. So I think I'm going to go with Andy on this and go 4 stars, which doesn't happen often. Usually when I say it's going to be 3 stars, it's 3 stars. But this happened with Demon Knight also. I gave it half a star higher than I thought I was going to give it after hearing Jeff and Neri talk about it. And now I've gone up a whole star, a whole parasitic twin. Yeah. So there we go. So we've got 4, 3.5, and 4 parasitic twins for Malignant.
So I think we can pretty solidly call that a Shiver seal of approval. Like,
that
you should check it out. If you've listened, even if you've listened without watching it, you kind of wanted to know what we thought. Yeah, we definitely think you should give it a watch.
Yeah, I think anything that's a 3 is a hey, go ahead and watch this thing. You know, if it's 2.5, it's like, you know what, you might not like this, but and definitely
you weren't warned.
Yeah, exactly, and certainly anything less than 2.5, you know, I wouldn't recommend. But 3.5, I would. 4, definitely. 5, go see it now.
Yeah,
you know, it's that sort of thing. So, yeah. I like this. I really do like it. Andy, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
It was so much fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, of course. And of course for anyone else who is a fan who comments on our stuff occasionally, just know that flattery will get you everywhere.
Absolutely.
You know, nepotism is a real thing. All you got to do is suck up to us and be like, "Hey, I like your podcast," and I'll be like, "Oh my God, thank you so much," and let you get on our show. So on behalf of all of the Geek Bro Network, which includes podcasts like Mount Geekmore, which if you're watching live, you can see Daniel DeBona sporting our threads there, right? Mount Geekmore, What's Up Bro, Kick Flicks Seasons. Yeah, Kick Flicks Seasons. Better Let Me Tell You. Dose of Ellie.
Comedy Fitness.
Comedy Fitness. I think that's it.
We're all over the place.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and I think one in the pipeline as well.
Yeah. I think
So on behalf of all of us and us here at Shiver, fright you very much.